You may perhaps remember where we are in this journey through the opening chapters of the book of Job. Job is facing all kinds of turmoil and trouble and suffering and hardship. We're faced still with the question of why do bad things happen to good people. And in our reading from Job today, Job's friends who have assembled to come and try and give him some comfort and try and wrestle with that question of why do bad things happen to good people. The first one, Eliphaz, the Temanite, has decided to speak. Now there are some parts of the Bible where something surprising happens, but it's often easy to miss those surprising elements unless you read it very carefully. And this is one of those parts of the Bible. We'll remember, as I've already said, that in God's heavenly council there's a character called the accuser, who's a little like the opposition in our own parliament, in opposition, but at least for now loyal. And the accuser has asked God if he can test Job by taking everything from him and then by making him chronically ill. And the accuser's theory is that if he does that, then Job will stop loving God. The accuser is wrong. And then Job 4, Job flips over here and goes into poetry, very ancient philosophical poetry. Again, the question before is, why do bad things happen to good people? And Eliphaz speaks to him about the situation of poverty and illness that Job finds himself in when he was only recently so well off and healthy. And Eliphaz is trying to help Job make sense of it all. But what Eliphaz says may not be as straightforward as he makes out. And what he says, and this is the bit that's a bit of a surprise and you may have missed, and it's worth having the text before you, what he says comes from a source that is a little bit strange to say the least. So from verse 12 and onwards, Eliphaz hears a voice. The message that this voice gives is the very same message that Eliphaz then delivers to his friend Job. There is a whisper of this message, and it comes to him in a vision when normal people are asleep. I think it's okay to use your imagination here. The pitch black of night, the wind blowing, strange things happening. And in verse 14, Eliphaz hears the voice and dread comes upon him. He is afraid, but it gets a bit spookier still. A spirit glides past his face and stands before Eliphaz, but he cannot make out what form the spirit takes. He doesn't quite know what the spirit is. Eliphaz hears the spirit speaking, and what it says again is the message that Eliphaz will give to Job. And that message is the rhetorical question that's at the centre of the passage, and I've given as the title to this sermon. Can mortals be right before God? Or to put it another way, can human beings be pure before their Maker? There are three questions I'd like to ask in the sermon. The first is, what is the likely source of Eliphaz's message? The second, oddly, but it will make sense when we get there, is what is humanity made from? And the third is, can we be pure before God, and how? So question one, what is the likely source of Eliphaz's message? So this strange message that Eliphaz receives, where did he get it from? And whilst we're asking that question, you may well be thinking, well, why on earth does it matter? Well, it matters a lot because it teaches us a very important lesson about how to read the Bible. Everything in the Bible is true. Eliphaz really did feel that way. That is the question that he wanted to ask Job. But not everything in the Bible is God's truth. Not everything in the Bible is something that you should do or should believe. It's someone's truth, but it might not be God's truth. That's why we have to read it carefully. Eliphaz's message questions the status of humanity, God's creation. Eliphaz's message questions your status. Can you be pure before your Maker? Can you stand in the presence of God? Or to put that another way, in the words of an advertising slogan, are you worth it? When we think of the question, can a human stand pure before their Maker? Maybe some of us doubt the existence of a Creator God. But whether we believe in God or not, all of us have likely asked those same questions or made similar statements. as the one that lies at the heart of the question, can human beings be pure before their Maker? We ask questions like, who am I? Whose am I? If you're going through a tough time, you might say, do I deserve this? If you're going through a fantastic time, maybe you'll get round to saying, do I deserve this? You might say to yourself, I'm not really important. Or you might ask yourself, how do I become important? How do I increase my value with regard to others? You might say, I'm not worthy. Or you might ask the question, how do I become worthy and increase my value in the world? In the story of Job, there is one other person who very purposefully questions the status of humanity in this way. And that person is the accuser. Job, he exclaims to God, Job, he'd do nothing. He'd be nothing. He'd love you as nothing if only you took away all his wealth and his help. And now, here's Eliphaz repeating the same kind of message as the accuser's line of accusation. And so it makes me wonder where this spirit that Eliphaz sees and hears comes from. Mortals, can they stand before their Maker? To give validity to the questions being asked, the strange spirit passes along some more information to Eliphaz. God doesn't trust his servants in heaven. God considers his own messengers to make mistakes. What that must mean then is that God can't trust people on earth who are just made from the dust and clay of the ground. But remember, when the accuser questions Job's status before God, God does trust Job. God stakes his own reputation on Job. He is certain of Job. And I, therefore, lean toward thinking that this line of questioning by Eliphaz is wrong. It's true, it's how Eliphaz feels, but it's not the truth. What is humanity made of? My second question. Eliphaz says that humanity is made from the dust of the ground. Theologically, he is, of course, correct, and that's the story at the beginning of Genesis. Science teaches us that humanity is made of the dust of stars, which is a lovely thing to think of, I think. We know that we are fragile. COVID has reminded us of this fact. We are made of dust, and to dust we shall return. But that's not the whole story, is it? As much as the Bible tells us that we are fragile, the Bible is also very, very keen to say that we have God's breath, God's spirit in us, that we are made in the image of God. You are made in the image of God. You are created. You have free will. You have emotions and hope. You have capacity to love and to be generous. You look like God, which some mornings is a worrying thought. What I mean by that, of course, is that you are a little like a statue that's put up to remind people of who is in charge in any particular place. You are a statue of God, a living statue. You are a representation of a king. You are the servant of a king. The New Testament goes even further and says that you are a son or daughter of the king. You are a co-heir with Christ. That is a big deal. Now, sure, you make mistakes. But the Bible is full of people who make mistakes, and they are still children of God. So when we say, I'm no good, when we say, I don't really matter, when we say what I'm doing here in my little corner of Kelshall has no eternal significance, then you're repeating a lie of the accuser. You're repeating a lie of the accuser. Now, some of you might fall into the opposite danger. Sometimes we think, I'm really brilliant, me, I'm doing great. And we act as if that's because of us, as if our worth is because we've earned that by merit. And we fail to recognise that everything that we are and all that we have is because of the grace of God. And so we must remember, you cannot save yourself. Don't take pride in your religious status, or how good you are, or your wealth, or your education or any of those things. Yes, you've worked hard for it, I understand all that. But you are who you are by the grace of God. And equally, don't say that you're no good and worthless. They're both lies, and both of them will do you no good at all. And so on to our last question. Question that we asked a little bit last week. Are you friends with God? Can we be pure before God, and how? Jesus Christ is a friend to sinners and saints. Christ is pre-existent. He is, he was, and he evermore shall be. And Christ had not yet been born on earth at the time of this advice and this message from Eliphaz. But when Eliphaz asked Job those rhetorical questions, can a human be pure before their Maker? I bet that Christ was in heaven saying, yes, Eliphaz. Yes, they can. I don't mind how bad you are. Stand before God and be pure because of what Christ has done for you. I don't mind how good you are. It's not good enough. You do stand pure before God because of what Christ has done for you. And that, my friends, is how this fairly obscure part of the Bible, a piece of beautiful, if somewhat long, and ancient Hebrew poetry, asks the question of why do bad things happen to good people? That is why it's still relevant to our lives today. I'll say it again. I don't mind how bad you are. Stand before God and be pure because of what Christ has done for you. I don't mind how good you are. It's not good enough. You stand before God pure because of what Christ has done for you. Amen.